Their wedding photos hung in a frame until he deciphered her diary. Pages covered in someone else's handwriting and Cayman account numbers. What's scarier? A knife in the back or a virus in a banking app? Nail yourself to the screen. The ending will change your idea of justice. The unraveling began in the quiet spaces between our routines, the pauses in conversation that stretched too long, the way Rachel's laughter no longer reached her eyes when I cracked a joke about the rain. We'd built a life in Portland that resembled one of her meticulously designed mood boards. All exposed brick, succulents in geometric planners, and artisanal coffee subscriptions. For 8 years, I'd mistaken routine for stability, assuming our synchronized Google calendars and Sunday Farmers Market trips were proof of something unbreakable. Rachel worked from home, her days a blur of client Zoom calls and Adobe Suite projects while I managed logistics for an outdoor apparel company, my commute a predictable 27-minute drive across the Fremont Bridge. The first fracture appeared on an unremarkable Thursday. Rachel had started wearing a new perfume, jasmine layered with something smoky, unfamiliar. She claimed it was a sample from a local apothecary, but I caught the receipt in the trash days later. $220, Maison Francis Kurkdjian Oud Satin Mood. A scent marketed as seductive intensity for evening wear. That same week, her gym sessions shifted from mornings to evenings. The 7 p.m. yoga class is less crowded, she explained, adjusting the strap of her Lululemon mat bag. A bag that now carried protein bars she'd never liked and a water bottle etched with the logo of a climbing gym across town. I cataloged these changes, silently, burying unease beneath spreadsheets and inventory audits. Denial tasted like the cold brew she left in the fridge every morning, bitter but familiar. Then came the night of the storm. Rachel had fallen asleep on the couch, her MacBook glowing faintly on the coffee table. A Slack notification pulsed, "Ethan, see you tomorrow 9 a.m., followed by a winking emoji. I told myself it meant nothing until I noticed her Apple Watch charging nearby. The screen lit up as I passed. A text thread filled with heart emojis and a location pin for a boutique hotel in the Pearl District. The following days became a forensic exercise. I cross-referenced her Google timeline with credit card statements, uncovering gaps, a 2-hour lunch break at a downtown parking garage, a $178 charge at a lingerie shop 3 blocks from Ethan's apartment. I memorized his LinkedIn profile. Senior Art Director, 34, rock climbing enthusiast, Portland State alum. His Instagram revealed a penchant for craft cocktails and weekend trips to Mount Hood, trips Rachel had blamed on client retreats. The betrayal crystallized one afternoon as I sorted the recycling. Beneath empty LaCroix cans, I found a crumpled receipt from a photo booth at the Nines Hotel, timestamped 2:14 a.m. on a night she'd claimed to be troubleshooting a client's website crash. The strip showed 4 images. Rachel in a sequined dress I'd never seen, her head thrown back in laughter, Ethan's hand possessive on her waist. In the last frame, she'd scribbled Zoxo in metallic gel pen. I drove to the Columbia Slough that evening, the photo burning in my pocket like a lit fuse. Rain sheeted against the windshield as I replayed every lie. The sudden interest in networking events, the unexplained Uber charges, the way she'd begun locking her phone face down on the counter. I traced the edges of the photo booth strip until the ink smudged, then hurled it into the swollen river. That night, I created a hidden folder on my laptop, Tax Documents 2019, and filled it with screenshots, GPS coordinates, and bank anomalies. Rachel's double life unfolded in spreadsheets. A $3,000 Venmo transfer to Ethan labeled consulting fee, a reservation for two at Le Pigeon on our anniversary month. I studied her patterns, noting how she deleted texts immediately but forgot to clear her Safari history, searches for discreet hotels near Portland, and how to hide assets in a marriage. The final piece came via a misplaced AirTag. Rachel had been grocery shopping at 10 p.m., her location pinging at a condo complex in the South Waterfront. I parked across the street, engine off, watching their shadows move behind frosted glass. When she returned at midnight, her hair smelled of chlorine and hotel shampoo. She claimed she'd swam laps at the community pool, but her swimsuit was bone dry in her gym bag. By dawn, I drafted a plan in a leather-bound notebook, the same one where we'd once sketched house blueprints. Revenge, I decided, would not be a hammer blow, but a slow tightening of screws. Rachel had woven her lies into the fabric of our shared life. I would unravel each thread with the precision of a watchmaker. Let her believe the facade held. Let her whisper promises to Ethan over $18 cocktails. The collapse would come not in shouts, but in spreadsheets, a silent, inexorable avalanche of her own making. I began with Ethan's employer. A deep dive revealed his startup's shaky funding and an ongoing IRS audit. An anonymous tip about his side projects, logos for unlicensed cannabis brands, found its way to HR. Next, I siphoned funds from our joint account into a new Ally Bank vault, labeling each transfer mortgage payment or utilities. Rachel, who'd always dismissed budgeting as neurotic, noticed nothing. The masterpiece, though, was the fake email account. CreativeRecruit_PDX at protonmail.com became Ethan's new best friend, dangling a dream job in Austin with a salary that made his LinkedIn profile blush. Over 3 weeks, I groomed his ambition, mirroring his slang stoked, vibes disrupt, until he bit. His resignation letter arrived on a Friday, the same day Rachel's urgent client deadline required her to work late. I cooked salmon that night, the aroma masking the acid churning in my gut. When she praised the meal, I smiled and said, "New recipe." By month's end, the stage was set. Rachel's world still spun smoothly, Ethan's promises of Austin sunsets, her clients none the wiser about the plagiarism evidence I'd stockpiled. She hummed in the shower, oblivious to the cracks spreading beneath her feet. I drank black coffee and waited. Let them have their stolen moments. Let them believe they'd outsmarted gravity. The collapse would taste sweeter cold. Revenge, I discovered, thrived in the granular, the unobserved decimal points in bank statements, the metadata buried in JPGs, the way a single misplaced comma in a contract could unravel a career. Rachel's world remained blissfully intact on the surface. Her Instagram still bloomed with photos of our happy hikes and artfully plated salads, while Ethan's LinkedIn boasted his new role at the Austin startup. But beneath the veneer, the rot spread. I began with her clients. Rachel's portfolio website, which I'd built for her early in our marriage, had a backdoor access I'd never mentioned. Over a weekend, I replaced 3 case studies with subtly altered versions. A logo for a vegan bakery now bore a striking resemblance to a trademark design from a Tokyo studio. A nonprofit's annual report used stock photos, still watermarked from Shutterstock. The changes were small enough to evade immediate notice, but ripe for discovery. Then I planted seeds. Anonymous tips to design forums, Reddit threads comparing her work to existing trademarks, a single DM to an influential creative director tagging her in a side-by-side comparison. Within days, the accusations snowballed. Her inbox flooded with panicked emails, her DMs a cacophony of rage and betrayal. I watched from my home office as she paced the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, voice fraying as she pleaded with clients. Ethan's downfall required a lighter touch. His Austin dream job, a fiction I'd spun through proton mail exchanges, collapsed when the company ghosted him after his resignation. Desperate, he reached out to contacts, only to find his reputation tarnished by rumors of the cannabis logos and a fabricated Glassdoor review accusing him of toxic leadership. I cloned his email domain, sending erratic messages to his remaining clients, misspelled subject lines, unprofessional gifs, a passive-aggressive reply all about invoice delays. By the time he realized the hack, 2 major accounts had dropped him. Rachel's financial blind spots proved her greatest vulnerability. For years, she'd entrusted me with taxes, oblivious to the offshore accounts I discovered in the Caymans, petty sums at first, now swollen with diverted client payments. I funneled the money through a labyrinth of crypto wallets, then donated it incrementally to causes she despised. A prologuing PAC, a climate denial think tank, a super PAC backing a senator she called a fossil with a pulse. Receipts arrived in her inbox, each donation receipt carbon copied to her professional email. When she confronted me, wide-eyed and trembling, I feigned ignorance. "Must be a phishing scam," I said, nodding at her MacBook. "You really should update your antivirus." The piece de resistance was the Airbnb listing. Using photos from her private Instagram, a folder she'd forgotten I could access, I crafted a luxury loft rental in Boise. The description mirrored her design sensibilities. Mid-century modern meets Pacific Northwest Hygge. Ethan's email, gleaned from Rachel's trash folder, received a reservation confirmation for a romantic getaway the weekend of her mother's 70th birthday. I timed the cancellation fee to hit his card the morning of their planned trip, draining his account hours before Rachel's flight to Spokane. She arrived at the airport to find her ticket void, her credit cards maxed, her texts to Ethan unanswered. I let the silence between us curdle. Rachel took to working in cafes, her laughter now brittle, her eyes darting to her phone every 30 seconds. She began losing clients to creative differences, a euphemism for the plagiarism scandals I'd engineered. Her hair, once glossy as crow feathers, dulled to a brittle brown. She stopped wearing Ethan's bracelet. The final stroke came via a USB drive left in her tote, a gift from a fictitious admirer. It contained a video loop, security footage of Ethan at a dimly lit bar, his arm around a woman who wasn't Rachel, their whispers caught by a hidden mic. The woman was a paid actor, the bar a set rented for 4 hours, but the doubt it sowed was priceless. Rachel spent nights hunched over her laptop, rewatching the clip, zooming in on his hands, her breath hitching at his familiar laugh. When she finally confronted him, I listened through the AirTag hidden in her purse. Their fight crackled through my headphones, a symphony of shattered delusions. Ethan's voice, sharp with bourbon and defensiveness. Rachel's, a scalpel dipped in venom. By dawn, she'd packed a suitcase, her movements jerky as a marionette. I pretended to sleep, savoring the click of the front door, the Uber's tires hissing on wet asphalt. The next morning, I scrubbed the house of her presence. Her half-empty kombucha bottles, the throw pillows she'd insisted on, the framed photo of us at Cannon Beach, all boxed and labeled for donation. In her studio, I found sketches for a logo concept titled E+H Forever. I burned them in the fire pit, watching the embers rise like dying fireflies. Revenge, I realized, was an event. It was an ecosystem, a self-sustaining cycle of consequences I'd set into motion. Rachel and Ethan were now ghosts in each other's lives, haunting opposite coasts, their mistakes metastasizing without my intervention. I poured a glass of single malt, toasting the shadows on the wall. The game was no longer mine to play. It was theirs to lose. The final act unfolded not with fireworks, but with the quiet certainty of a clock striking midnight. Rachel's unraveling became a public spectacle, though few recognized the architect behind it. Her remaining clients abandoned her after a viral TikTok compared her original designs to a Swedish studio's work, a comparison I'd seeded through a network of burner accounts. The video dissected her portfolio with forensic cruelty, zooming in on traced vectors and lifted color codes. By noon, her website crashed under the traffic. By dusk, her professional email auto-replied with a generic out-of-office message she hadn't set. Ethan's demise arrived via certified mail. A lawsuit from his former employer, a document I drafted using pirated legal software, accused him of breaching a non-compete clause. The attached evidence, a fabricated email chain showing him poaching clients, was bolstered by a deepfake audio file of his voice discussing kickbacks. He sold his car to pay the retainer, then his vintage Leica camera. When Rachel wired him $5,000 from a secret PayPal account I'd missed, I triggered a fraud alert, freezing her assets for 72 hours. By then, Ethan's apartment lease had lapsed. I filed for divorce on a cloudless Tuesday, attaching a dossier of her hidden Cayman accounts to the paperwork. The judge, a stern woman with a reputation for favoring financial transparency, awarded me 70% of our assets. Rachel's lawyer, a harried public defender, never questioned the timestamps on the offshore transfers or the photos of her accepting consulting fees in cash from Ethan. The morning after the decree, I returned to our home, my home, to find her kneeling in the backyard, digging up a time capsule we'd buried after buying the house. Inside were letters we'd written to our future selves, a bottle of 14 Dom Perignon, and a sapling we'd intended to plant. She clutched her letter, the paper gone brittle, her tears smudging the ink. I watched from the kitchen window as she snapped the sapling over her knee, then left the shards in the dirt. 3 weeks later, a certified envelope arrived at my new address, a cabin near Mount Hood, its walls lined with first editions and topographic maps. Inside were Rachel's house keys and a Polaroid of us at Multnomah Falls, dated 2 months before I'd found the photo booth strip. On the back, she'd scrawled, "I'm sorry," in the same metallic gel pen from the hotel. I burned it in the wood stove, the plastic scent lingering like a ghost. Months passed. Rachel's name surfaced in a Portland Business Journal article about failed creative entrepreneurs. Ethan became a bartender in Boise, his Instagram a graveyard of deleted posts. I tracked their decline through encrypted alerts, credit score dips, eviction notices, a restraining order filed, then dropped after Rachel showed up at Ethan's bar. Their suffering was algorithmic, predictable, dull. The cabin's silence became my sanctuary. I took up woodworking, carving intricate chess sets from maple and walnut. Each piece, the knights with their coiled tension, the queens with their implacable stares, mirrored the game I'd played. Sometimes, hiking the Timberline Trail, I'd find myself at a clearing overlooking the city. Portland glittered in the distance, a diorama of lives I'd once mistaken for permanence. On the anniversary of the divorce, a notification chimed, a security camera alert. Rachel stood at the end of my driveway, her silhouette gaunt under the porch light. She held a cardboard box labeled "Your Things." I watched her shift from foot to foot breath fogging in the cold before placing it on the steps. Inside were my old flannels, a stack of mixed CDs from college, and the charred remains of the sapling. No note. I let the box sit for a week, rain warping the cardboard, before carrying it to the fire pit. The flames devoured the relics of our marriage, heat blistering the air. In the ashes, I found a melted USB drive, the one containing the Ethan doppelganger video. Its warped plastic glinted like a black jewel. Now, when the snow blankets the cabin and the wind howls through the firs, I replay the collapse like a favorite album. Not out of malice, but precision. Every lie exposed, every vulnerability exploited, every domino tipped with mathematical grace. Rachel taught me that love is a perishable commodity, but revenge is an heirloom. The chess set sits unfinished on my workbench. The king remains uncarved, his face blank as a moon. Some nights, I trace the absence and smile. Let others crown themselves. I prefer the shadows where the game lives on. One story may be ending, but the excitement never stops. Don't wait. Jump right into the next one and keep the thrill alive.